Welcome to the latest in the TechFire series of briefings. This series is designed essentially to give people the information they need in making important IT decisions, answering the burning questions in IT. And the balance of this series of presentations is really about interaction. So all of the presentations are brief and are really just an aid to show where people are on any given topic. And really the emphasis is on the discussion, the questions, and the interaction to make sure that you get what you need when you leave the room. So our agenda for this morning, obviously we're running slightly late, so we'll try and pick up some time on the way. But my name is Paul Hearns. I'm editor of Computerscope magazine and the chair of these TechFire events. So I'll do a little bit of scene setting, but I'll also be presenting results from a survey that we did with AirSpeed and Fortinet in Computerscope, which will be in the December issue, which will be due out next week. But I'll be giving you a preview on that because it covers many of the topics that we'll be talking about this morning. Plus, it's a really good sample size for the Irish market, which is often difficult to get specific figures on. So then we'll have Peter Hendrick from AirSpeed, and Peter will be talking about managing these issues, but also about outsourcing in security from managed service providers and why that might be a good idea. Shane Grennan, country manager for Fortinet, will be essentially scaring the pants off you, and he'll be highlighting why it might be necessary to look at outsourcing some of these elements. Then we'll have a user experience from David Ryan, IT infrastructure manager with Irish Distillers and their recent IT transformation program. Then we'll have Kevin Gannon, chief operating officer from Chill Insurance, and Kevin will be talking about using various media to communicate with their wide variety of customers, essentially. And everything from plain old mail right up to social media and everything in between. And essentially how to do that in a heavily regulated environment and still maintain security and control. Then we will have the panel discussion and questions and answers. And when you registered for the event, you got an opportunity to submit a question. So we have several of those, and we'll kick the panel off with those. But we'll be looking to the floor for more questions and to answer any issues you might have, but also for reaction and show of hands to see where people in the room are on these issues, because some people have a very mature infrastructure, some people don't, and essentially there's lots of different stages to be having these and different challenges at different areas. So we'll be looking to see where people are. So, as we've all seen, the threat landscape has changed immeasurably in recent times. Since about 2009, roughly coinciding with the what's now been termed the Aurora operation, which targeted Google, the nature of threats has really changed and evolved, and new players have emerged from this. So the old script kiddie or the people who are trying to simply establish a reputation have given way to people like hacktivists, more sophisticated criminals who are more profit motivated than ever before. But also we've seen a rise in state-sponsored hacking. And we won't point any individual fingers this morning, but we all know who these states are. And in fact, there's been a report just within the last few days that Stuxnet version 2 is actually on the way, as certain nation states are not particularly happy with the peace progress that have been made negotiating with certain other states about their nuclear ambitions. So essentially, what it means for ordinary companies is that a whole new host of threats and people to deal with have emerged in recent times. So this term, advanced persistent threats, came out in about 2009, 2010. And essentially what it means is the likes of Stuxnet carefully crafted attacks to do individual things. But the thing is that they tend to be persistent, as in it's not just a one-time shot. these guys tend to have the time to actually sit around, have a poke, see what comes back. If that doesn't work, withdraw, go around the other side, try again. And essentially, it's this persistence which has led to a real problem in actually dealing with these things. So 40% said that they didn't have specific IT budget for dealing with incidents. This is despite the fact that recent research by Deloitte and EMC here showed that the average cost of dealing with a serious security incident in Ireland could be up to 30,000 euros per incident. So that's really something to think about. 18% said that employees have unrestricted access to the internet. Now, that could be a good idea for your organization. It might not. But essentially, what it means is that if it's unrestricted, is it unmonitored? So, really something to think about there. A third said that their ability to actively detect cybersecurity incidents in advance was adequate. 38% were neutral on that, and 25% disagreed. That's a self-assessment. I would say that there is a lot of qualification to go in that. I would say there might be a lot of complacency around that. A lot of Irish organisations have a tendency to put something in place and think, that's done. The one thing that we have seen with this is constant review and update is necessary. Things change so quickly that active management of these things is absolutely vital. So when we asked people about what their visibility of the IT infrastructure was, the vast majority said that it was either good or very good. But there is a big section there for fair, and there's a fair section of poor as well. But again, this is a self-assessment basis, so it potentially has to be taken with a grain of salt. It's in comparison to what? So 70% actively monitor and report on the security of IT infrastructure, but 17% said they don't. That's potentially a lot of companies who don't really know what's going on. 95% said they use network monitoring tools, 40% log analysis, and then SIEM tools, about a third. Okay, so that's good because it means that obviously that was a multi-choice answer. So a lot of people are probably using several of these. But again, jumping out at me would be this 95% using network monitoring tools. What's the level of sophistication of these tools? Just how in-depth are they? Because one of the subsequent questions we asked was, what are the problems that you were seeing, or what complaints would you have about your current security tools and infrastructure?
The objective from my side this morning is to kind of encourage people to look at managed security service providers for elements of their security. It doesn't have to be your entire security portfolio. It can be elements of it. So I've given some scenarios in terms of taking parts of security or additional security that you can implement on your network. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. But before we go into that, I'd like to give you a view as we would see security going forward into the future, and based on network connectivity today and how mobile users are impacting security from your perspective as IT directors. So today we look at the enterprise. The enterprise typically today, in a lot of places we can see from our perspective as a service provider, are taking 100 megabits per second to access connectivity with the typical firewall inside on the LAN. As time moves on, bandwidth becomes more available. Technology and infrastructure is moving those access speeds up to a gigabit per second in terms of connectivity. Whether that's used for private network connectivity, multi-site LAN-to-LAN connectivity, or simply internet connectivity. A lot of companies today have hot desk working. People go into the office, they don't actually have a desk. They connect onto the network, or they work from home, or they work remotely. So the idea of moving unified communications into a virtual environment is key. And the security aspects associated with that obviously have to change. The firewall as we know it, or the traditional firewall as we know it, needs to evolve. If we look at a hybrid approach, in some scenarios, we're putting 48 CPE on the customer side as well. The benefit of this is when we're looking at application control. Typically, we're delivering layer 2 or layer 3 connectivity across a WAN. The days of looking at QoS related to data, voice and internet are going.
So the sweet spot for cyber criminals is mid-market because the ratio of protection deployed and money available for attention is best, and that's where they're focusing their activities. One of the other trends we see definitely is complexity, and this I think stretches all across the security industry for a very long time. If you go back to when, I don't know, the first piece of malware was discovered, what prevented it being widespread was that the implementation of that malware, so the crafting of that malware, was extremely difficult, so you had to have a lot of technical skill. But at the time, you had to have an awful lot of technical skill to implement it as well. So that removed, or presented rather, a barrier for widespread use of the malware. But over time, complexity has changed. So the complexity of attacks has gone up, so the underlying characteristics of what are being used in a typical attack have grown exponentially. But unfortunately, the worrying part are that the complexity of the usage has gone down at the same rate. So now, without a shadow of a doubt, anyone in this room armed with a PC and Google will be able to launch a rudimentary attack on somebody else. All of the tools that are out there for either DDoS or launching malware or launching spam come with nice graphical user interfaces, and typically all you have to do is either enter an IP address or enter a URL or enter a destination, and there's normally a big red button with fire on it, and you press the button and the attack is launched. So now all of the barriers of entry for people to launch or engage in cybercriminal activity have been removed because the complexity of usage has decreased.
We saw from our survey that there seems to be a certain reluctance in the Irish market in general in terms of looking at managed service providers in general and in security in particular. So before your current transformation program, what was your attitude as an organisation to outsourcing in general, and secondly then for security in particular?
Yeah, we're quite a small IT organisation, a small IT group, and this is a world that's changing so rapidly. And we could never try to be an expert in threat management. So, we would definitely be using outside resources to help us monitor and control.
So, was there a level of comfort there with that, or was that something that you had to do some convincing on?
No, we've traditionally outsourced quite a bit, so it's nothing new to our culture.
Okay, so there was a comfort with being able to negotiate what you needed from these things.
Absolutely, and a realization that we couldn't do it as well as we should be able to do it, that others could do.
Okay. The relative youth of the company means that you don't necessarily have certain entrenched attitudes which might characterize a more mature business.
Well, I think we're incredibly agile. I think we've taken a slightly different approach to the business model, and because we're a new company and internally the people are quite agile, and we didn't have any legacy systems, and I think that's probably one of our key strengths in terms of how we've moved along over the last 3 years. There wasn't really anything to hold us back in terms of any cost-benefit analysis, or any drag on that. And it was pretty much a green field. And then I suppose the users are looking at everything we're doing as being an enhancement, and the business is looking at each of those things as an increment. And so it's actually probably the easiest starting point in terms of rolling out.
Very good. Given that you have such a profile in terms of your marketing campaigns, tell us a little bit about the sort of incident response and monitoring and things like that you've had to implement as a result.
Well, I suppose, yeah, the bigger we get, the more aware we are that we're a target, especially because we're in that consumer space. And how we respond, as I said at the start, we operate a managed service environment, so the reporting comes back through to us both from AirSpeed and our LAN provider services. In the medium term, we want to move to kind of a NOC type scenario where we're taking both the application reporting, network reporting, and the external threat reports, and trying to bring that back in-house. At the minute, it is a bit fragmented in terms of not having that single point, but that's something that we're going to address over the next 6 months.
We talk about supply chain or connectivity to partners or businesses. Certainly we as a carrier would have services from other carriers, and we're connected directly to their network from an order processing network visibility perspective. A lot of these connections are set up with IPsec tunnels, but again, we would put them into a zero trust, and we would carry out SSL decryption and looking at deep packet inspection on every packet that comes through on those IPsec tunnels, because it's important. Otherwise we're relying on their security systems to ensure that we're secure, which I think today I don't think anybody can sit back and have complacency to think that somebody else is going to take care of that problem.
Okay. Is there a sort of a checklist that people should have when they know that they are going to be a target and possibly for fairly sophisticated attacks? Maybe, Jim, if you want to take that one first.
There are some basic checklists, all right, but I think the problem there with the US government maybe is that they have access to a lot of the encryption keys. So unless you have full control of your own encryption keys before it goes into the cloud or before it goes onto the internet, you are under some degree of risk, I suppose. There are a lot of new technologies coming down in that area, and certainly when we're helping people move their resources maybe from an existing closed infrastructure up to the cloud, we would certainly be doing a lot of, I suppose, intelligent transformation of their information. So intelligent migration is what we call it. So finding out again what your information is before you get it up there, and securing and not letting some of the information go up there. However, the best thing to do is maybe as it leaves your network, it's completely encrypted, and you have access, and only you have access to those encryption keys. So there are a number of technologies out there, newer ones. Cipher Cloud is one that is doing well in the States. Probably hasn't had any impact here yet, but we would certainly be looking at those kind of disruptive technologies before we go out there.
Okay. Said that despite the fact that certain very public outages have occurred in cloud services, which are supposed to be by their nature highly resilient, I certainly in my work have not encountered any serious reports of failures in managed security services. So I'd be interested in the panel's insights in that as to why that may be. Is it that it's a more robust model in the first place, or that there are less points of failure, or it's a newer service and people are just better at it? So
I'll answer briefly and give it to Peter. He's probably the best qualified to answer. But I think it's, we large cloud-based utility, grid computing, whatever you want to call it, ultra-large data centers are something relatively new. We've been building Layer 2 and IP networks at a very reliable level for a very long time, and when the security element is layered into that, it's designed in exactly the same way. So the internet has been around for a very long time, and it's designed very robustly. Some of the outages in cloud services, I think, are resident in the data center, and that's something that's a little bit newer.
Yeah, I think probably the references, Paul, you're referring to are specific to a single site whereby they've had some major power disruption or something has happened in the network in the data center. And if I look at it, the services we provide and the network, our security service is geodiverse in 2 different data centers. Our core security service. But obviously that's connected together on a fibre network, and we obviously have to make sure that the technology behind that, the layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 technology is all resilient and designed and tested correctly. So we have processes in terms of testing failover of paths and so on.
Thank you very much to everybody again, and we'll hopefully see you at another TechFire, and all information is on techfire.ie. So thank you very much.